Battles against fearsome monsters and villains are a staple of gaming, and Lara's adventures are not exempt. Here is my list of top 10 Tomb Raider boss fights. Far beneath St. Francis Folly and nestled deep in a flooded cavern, Lara encounters the Atlantean Centaurs as they stood guard against the tomb of Tshirts. This was one of the more memorable boss fights in the series, and depending on how you felt about the adrenaline move, you either loved it or hated it. But aside from that, the concept of this boss fight is objectively pretty damn cool. You'll be hearing that a few times during the course of my list. But think about it, stone statues of ancient hybrid beasts which burst to life and canter around, throwing bolts of petrifying energy at Lara as she works out the correct method of fighting them. Whew, it's not easy. After having shot them enough, Lara needs to pick up their shiny shield and reflect their Gorgon gaze back at them, turning them back to stone before she can blow those horses to pieces.
Bye, bye, little Sebastian.
Even if you haven't played Tomb Raider 1 since 1996, chances are you remember the Torso monster. Natla, the fallen Atlantean queen's first attempt at breeding the next giant leap in evolution. Keyword being giant. This results in a slight mishap as the giant fleshless monster is born without skin and the lower half of its body, so it's forced to drag itself around. It's conceptually extremely gruesome. Can you imagine a faithful version of that in today's graphics? It's a simple fight. You're just jumping around, shooting at it, trying to avoid its swiping grasps until it perishes. But honestly, even if Lara hadn't filled it full of lead, I can't imagine it would have survived for long by itself, either from starvation or from falling off that ledge into the lava below. After raiding the tomb of King Arthur, Lara encounters its guardian, an enormous leviathan serpent hiding in the subterranean caverns of Cornwall. It's visually pretty damn cool, and it has Lara dodging its venomous acidic spit during the battle. However, the key to fighting this boss isn't to pepper it with bullets, but rather to target its environment. Shooting large bell-like ornaments above the lake distracts the serpent, allowing Lara to pull heavy cages crushing down onto its head. Ever the creative spirit, Lara decides the death by aneurysm is the way to go with this beastie. As far as boss fights go, it's certainly one of Lara's more inventive victories. In Tomb Raider 3, Lara faces off against Dr. Willard, a man after Natla's heart who decides that genetic engineering is the best way to give evolution a kick in the pants. He uses elements harvested from meteorites, and if you watched my endgame video, you'll know how important they are in Tomb Raider. He transforms himself into an enormous, invulnerable, four-legged critter, a little bit insect, a little bit arachnid, and completely demented. WILLARD 2.0 stalks around an ancient ceremonial chamber, blasting Lara with lethal bolts of energy in an attempt to stop her from collecting the artifacts around the room and draining the source of its power. And then she can finish him off. Amanda, despite being criminally underexplored as a character steeped in mysticism and the occult, manages to give us one of the most visually awesome boss fights of this series. The beast from the Peruvian Wraithstone consumes her physical form, and Lara fights off against a spectral shadow demon within a stone circle. As boss fights go, it's the type I like. Nothing over-the-top complicated, shoot it until it's down, and then have Lara go and stab it with an ancient otherworldly weapon thought lost to time and legend. Pretty standard. Do people class this as a boss fight? Sometimes you can't actually fight the boss. Rather, as in Underworld, this stage is where you're being constantly attacked whilst completing an objective. While some say hunting down Thor's hammer only to have Lara solve a puzzle instead of using it to fight the big bad was a missed opportunity, I actually enjoyed that the last section was a big platforming puzzle. Lara having to scale a monumental structure. Is it the biggest single ancient structure in the series? And systematically destroy parts of it to foil Natla's plan rather than your typical generic boss fight was pretty neat. It was a bold decision for the game and not something that had been attempted before in such a scale. But yeah, I do wish we got to go hammer time on Natla ourselves instead of having to watch it in a cutscene. I can hear the cries of frustration already, but forget the control issues just for a moment. BOAZ is conceptually one of my faves, based on another video game boss trope. It's something that's present throughout Final Fantasy and Resident Evil, among many, many others. The idea of bosses transforming into different forms throughout the fight. This scientist started off as a twisted, evil woman, part of a cabal of immortality hunters, but she was betrayed by her Dark Master, who threw her into a cocoon and had her emerge as the BOAZ pod. A monstrous scorpion the size of a small bus, capable of munching prey, lancing them with its claw-like mandibles, and projectile vomiting acid at its foes. But that's not even her final form. When the pod is defeated, out hatches BOAZ the human dragonfly, hell-bent on stabbing and slicing anything in her path. Thankfully, it doesn't take many bullets before she completely loses her head. For me, my third place award goes to the final boss from Shadow of the Tomb Raider. In the largely grounded and realistic Survivor trilogy, the AMARU fight is a shining beacon throwing back to some earlier supernatural showdowns. As he draws on the power of KUKULKAN through an ancient mystical dagger, AMARU stands protected beneath a magic force field as he begins his ancient ritual to remake the world. It's not a straightforward fight though. Lara first needs to find a way to destroy his force field before repeatedly plunging the ancient dagger into him to draw out his godlike powers. Conceptually, this fight is epic, and it looks so damn cool as it takes place atop a lost pyramid beneath the darkened skies of an eclipse. If future boss fights are anywhere near this cool, then bring them on. Italian crime lord cultists don't often stab themselves and turn into Chinese dragons, but this is Tomb Raider, so who cares? Bartoli the dragon is my number 2 place because, again, conceptually, wow. One of the most epic moments of the series has a final boss literally explode into draconic existence, blocking Lara's escape route within a cavern deep under the Great Wall of China. And this thing is massive, like really, really massive. Lara will be hurt if she gets too close, and torched to a crisp if she stays still too long and doesn't evade Bartoli's fiery breath. Yes, that's something that's entirely expected to happen. Pools of water lie around the chamber ready to douse the fires from Lara, as she's so often going to be turned into a human-shaped flaming torch. The boss fight is actually directly tied into the story myth of Tomb Raider 2 as well, not allowing Lara to just shoot the beast until it dies, as was the case with boss fights up until this. Players recall the intro cutscene showing a warrior monk removing the dagger from the dragon's chest in order to defeat it, and that's precisely what Lara needs to do to finish off the cult leader once and for all. My number 1 place for top boss fight goes to the Black Alchemist Pieter van ECKHART. Who saw that coming? Again, I state forget the controls and just think of the concept. This guy has lived for centuries harvesting organs and experimenting to maintain immortality to stay alive long enough to fulfill his dark desires. He employed magic and alchemy. He seals Lara within a force field, teleporting around his lab, fragmenting himself into different elementals and attacking Lara from different directions at the same time. When he ventures into the force field in order to exact a grand attack, raining fire from above, that's when Lara has the chance to stagger him with bullets and then plunge one of 3 ancient magic daggers into his body, containing his powers and draining his life force in the same way he was held prisoner back in the mists of time by an ancient secret society. This fight is unmatched as a conclusion to a villain's story in the Tomb Raider series, and yet it doesn't require much puzzle solving or prove to be overly difficult, making it a very satisfying blend of mythology and gameplay, much like Bartoli and AMARU. Here's some honourable mentions and notes to finish off. I feel like people would rage if I didn't mention the T-Rex, but honestly, as iconic as it is, I never considered it a boss fight in Tomb Raider 1, and the less said about that forced adrenaline fight in Anniversary, the better. The fight with Matthias at the end of Tomb Raider 2013 should be mentioned if only for the immensely cool fanservice moment of giving Lara her dual pistols, if only she'd been allowed to keep them afterwards. Finally, controversially, Sophia Lee never did it for me. You flip a switch and she's dead 2 minutes after you meet her. If she'd had more story and presence in the game, then maybe I'd have been interested. And that's my list. Please, as always, let me know how wrong I am in the comments below, and feel free to share your list. Guaranteed you'll find many people who agree with you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.